All right, one person, a second person, third person. Okay, go.
With chronic conditions like cancer being the second leading cause of death in the United States, the question on the morality of euthanasia also becomes more relevant with the more cases, with the more additional patients there are. The Surveillance, Epidemiology, and End Results Program by the National Cancer Institute's Division of Cancer Control and Population Sciences predicts new cases in 2020 to be around 89,500 for young adults and adolescents. On top of that, we live in a precarious era now, the COVID-19 era. You've seen the headlines on the news. Despite the number of cases in the U.S. refuse to slow down, and there's also no specific antiviral treatment recommended at the moment. As the number of cases continue to ramp up, the debate also persists. Should a terminally ill patient have the right to die with the assistance of a physician? This is also referred to as euthanasia. For my speech today, I'll be utilizing the sources of Ethics for Life, a textbook reading by Judith Boss, and an article from the European Journal of Public Health, and also another one from the Science and the Social Science and Medicine Journal. Today, I want to persuade you on how philosophically ethical euthanasia can be by arguing of its theoretical support in two prominent schools of thought: ethical egoism and utilitarianism, while also distancing it from general suicide. The first school of thought, ethical egoism, is defined by Judith Boss, an author of philosophy textbooks for McGraw-Hill, as the theory that people should use rational thoughts to make decisions with his or her own best self-interest. Thus, euthanasia can be morally right if it spares a competent terminally ill patient of emotional, physical, and psychosocial suffering. A trend for chronically ill patients is one called self-perceived burden, which, as self-explanatory as it is their perspective that they are a burden to those who care for them. One study in the Social Science Journal by C.J. McPherson et al. On the perspectives of terminally ill patients in palliative care concludes that about 19 to 65% of patients have experienced strong negative feelings and even suffering from their belief that they are a burden to those who care for them. Furthermore, some chronic conditions can be so bad that the patients experience constant daily pain and are also bedridden at hospitals. Unlike the rest of us, that means they can no longer enjoy normal daily life anymore. As for the second school of thought, utilitarianism, it is also defined by Boss as the theory that actions producing the most pleasure are good, while those that promote pain are bad. Thus, euthanasia can also be morally right if it contributes to the greatest happiness by relieving patients' loved ones of economical and emotional stress. After all, medical care costs can gradually pile up and be economically burdened equivalently for some families in some parts of the world. Anyone here who would ever deal with the U.S. healthcare system will likely be able to relate to that. In fact, another study in the European Journal of Public Health by L. Pavitic et al. Over the burdens on family carers and care-related strain also remarks that general practitioners in Italy perceive that family carers of 71% of patients feel that they have a feeling of being emotionally and physically overburdened, with this being 1/4 of patients in Belgium and also 1/3 for patients in Spain and the Netherlands. Additionally, empathy for these terminally ill patients can be so great that even the family members can feel emotionally and physically suffocated by their suffering. But before I move on, I want to clear a misunderstanding about euthanasia that some people who have against it might think of. Euthanasia is not the same as general suicide. While they may have shared a base motivation for it, which is to end the suffering of the patient, they differ greatly from thereon. First of all, is that the state of mind during this process is entirely different. And in the case of suicide, the person is usually experiencing extreme negative or even drastic emotional state. Therefore, it is usually conducted purely selfishly. On the other hand, for euthanasia, it is also decided by the patient, but it is then discussed with the physician and the family members. Furthermore, it is done rationally over a period of time, rather than being impulsively or spontaneously like suicide might be. Secondly, suicide thoughts can be a symptom of a mental health issue, like severe depression. The reason I want to highlight this is that those with mental illness may not have like a stable or a skilled thought process that would influence their actual decision. In other words, they're not in a right state of mind, as some people will phrase it as. With all that being said, today I wanted to speak on how a competent terminally ill patient has a right to euthanasia based on two prompt ethical school of thoughts, and also how it is different from general suicide. To reiterate, the first school, ethical egoism, argues that to deny a patient of this right to euthanasia, it violates their autonomy to make rational decisions in their best self-interest, which again is to end their suffering. As for the second school, utilitarianism, it argues for the right to euthanasia on the grounds that if it benefits the greatest good or the most people, then that means, due to the fact that it alleviates the patient's loved ones, then that means it's also morally right. And lastly, euthanasia is different from suicide due to the fact that it is based on rationale rather than emotions, and is also without relying on negative, like self-destructive or even malicious like motivations that a mental illness might give them. In the end, as the number of cases of cancer and COVID-19 increase, the likelihood of you also having to make a decision on euthanasia also increases. Remember, you're not weighing in an opinion on egoistic suicide like you might typically think, but euthanasia. Euthanasia is not decided by just one person, for one person. That's the end of my speech. Thank you for listening, and good night.
And one last person. Bye.